Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 7th session in the Administrator Forum series. There will be one more session in May, and details about that will be provided at the end of today's session. These sessions are being presented as a virtual conference sponsored by the Illinois State Board of Education and coordinated by Early Childhood Professional Learning, or ECPL, a project of the Center Resources for Teaching and Learning. My name is Lynn Burgett, and I am the project manager for the ECPL coaching project. We have a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please be sure your name that appears on screen is the same first and last name you used to register for this session. We need this for attendance purposes. So if necessary, please edit your name to ensure we are able to confirm your attendance. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be posted on the ECPL YouTube channel within the upcoming week. All previous Administrator Forum sessions can also be found on our YouTube channel in case you missed any of them. Due to the large number of participants, your microphones will be muted throughout the session, and please remain in this session until the end because there will be additional important announcements before we close. At this time, I would like to introduce Maddie Kulik, an ISBE principal consultant in the EC department.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maddie Kulik, and I'm a principal consultant in the Early Childhood Department at the Illinois State Board of Education. Welcome to our 7th Administrative Forum session. Today, we're going to be talking about continuous quality improvement plans, also known as CQIPs. This is a topic I'm very excited to be diving into today, as there's something I work with in my day-to-day. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. First, we have Cindy Beabout. Cindy Beabout has served in many roles in early childhood education for over 40 years, with over 15 years serving Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion implementation. She's currently an ISBE program support specialist and coach. Also presenting today, we have Marlene McKenzie. Marlene McKenzie has worked in early care and education for over 30 years. She currently works as a consultant on a variety of early care and education projects, including her role as a program support specialist providing technical assistance to Preschool for All expansion programs. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to jot them down or write them in the chat. We're going to try to answer questions at the end of the session. However, if your question does not get answered today or you think of one later on, please reach out to our department at earlychi@isbe.net. Thank you so much for joining us today, and please enjoy the session.
Good morning. I'm Marlene McKenzie, and along with Cindy Beabout, I'll be one of your presenters today. So let's look at how we'll spend our time together. We'll begin with an overview of the CQIP cycle for Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion programs. Next, we will look in detail at how to develop the initial ISBE CQIPs. After this, we'll discuss how the CQIP, this intentional plan, is embedded throughout program practices. And then we'll wrap up with an exploration of things to consider in updating CQIP in year 2 and 3. There'll be an opportunity at the end of the presentation for Q&A, so please make notes of questions along the way or place them in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of the session. So what is a CQIP? As we begin, I'd like to share a definition from an ISBE guidance document. So a CQIP, according to this guidance, is a continuous quality improvement plan that outlines a process to ensure programs systematically and intentionally build excellence through improving services and increasing positive outcomes for children and families. And if you notice, we've underlined two key words here: systematically, and that lends to the idea of it being a plan, a system for doing this. And then also the word intentionality, so that there is a deliberate purpose for building this excellence for families. So the CQIP is an important part of the Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion programs. You can see information on the CQIP in item 19 of the compliance checklist. The information that we'll cover today about the CQIP includes the compliance checklist CQIP and also the ECERS 3 CQIP. And those will be based on reports received after a triennial monitor report, a monitor visit.
Hello, and I'm Cindy. I'm also hosting this with Marlene. This infographic here is from the Preschool for All Expansion Implementation Manual. You may have seen it before. It's on page 64. I love this image. It gives a very clear visual understanding that the continuous quality improvement plan is cyclical. Continuous growth in program excellence in support of student learning happens through this reflective and intentional process. When looking at this process, one needs to ask, how often do we do this? Who should be a part of this process? And who should be a part of the team to build program excellence? What voices need to be heard? While this is a cyclical process, there are two clear linear expectations for the CQIP. First is to complete both the initial ISBE compliance CQIP and ECERS 3 CQIP within 30 days of receiving your monitor report. This is sent to ecpip@isbe.net. And I think Susie is going to drop that in the chat for us so you can grab it and have it handy. The second, in all years that you do not have a monitor visit, programs must complete an annual update for both the ISBE compliance CQIP and the ECERS 3 CQIP. Updates must be submitted electronically to ISBE at the ECPIP update at isbe.net. And so we'll have that dropped into the chat for you to grab as well. These are due, this update is due on May 31st each year, which is coming up. In the next couple of weeks, your program contact person, as listed in the e-grant, will receive a reminder about this update that is due May 31st. For programs that are in their 4th year of the cycle, so this is a little extra note, the ECERS 3 compliance CQIP, they are still due on May 31st. The ECERS 3 CQIP document, the template, only goes up to year 3, so you simply have to copy a blank document and make that your year 4. It's still due this year, even though it doesn't show that there's a year 4 in there. Kind of an anomaly, but that is due on the 31st, just as per usual. The initial CQIP and each yearly updated CQIP. This is a special note to underline. It must be signed by the authorized official before submitting. This is required for both the compliance CQIP and the ECERS CQIP each time it is submitted. I'd like to add one caveat, and this is if you receive your monitor visit late in the school year, then you may be getting your monitor report when it is really too difficult. It's late enough in the year that it's too difficult to bring the team together for reviewing the reports and creating the CQIP as a team before the year ends. So if this is true, if this happens, you simply contact your ISBE consultant and ask for an extension to August 31st. The CQIP, here are some key features. Now we want to go over these 5 bubbles. The CQIP outlines a cyclical, data-driven process. It is proactive and not reactive. The CQIP environment is one in which data is collected and used to make positive changes. This process should be utilized even when things are going well. The CQIP is used as an ongoing process. The compliance checklist and ECERS 3 assessment tool provide clear expectations and exemplars of what excellence looks like for preschool for all and preschool for all expansion implementation. These tools provide a structure for programs' yearly review and reflection. With this cyclical process, excellence becomes an embedded practice. So let's just take a moment to become familiar with the 5 bubbles of the CQIP cycle. We will go into each in more detail later in the presentation. So let's start at the top bubble, self-assessment. This is a written annual practice within this cycle. Year 1 programs need to think about how will they conduct a self-assessment for the expectations mentioned in Compliance 19. Second, the second bubble, identify areas of strengths and effectiveness. The self-assessment or following a monitor visit, the ISBE compliance and ECERS 3 monitor reports are the data used by the team to reflect on practices. Bubble 3, plan improvements / CQIP. The team documents the plan for systematic and intentional improvements to build program excellence. After the monitor visit, you receive a monitor report within 6 to 8 weeks from the visit. CQIPs are due within 30 days after receiving the report. Bubble 4, implement improvements and professional learning opportunities. This means putting the plan into action the year following the initial CQIP and after each update for both the compliance checklist and ECERS 3. Bubble 5, review plan yearly reflection. Prior to the end of the school year, and that should be each school year, the team reflects on the successes and challenges of each CQIP's implementation. After team reflection, the compliance CQIP is updated in the follow-up section of this template. Also, 5 new focus areas are chosen for the ECERS 3 CQIP on the ECERS 3 CQIP template. The annual self-assessment is also done at this time because this informs the updated CQIP. It is a data-driven process.
So Cindy mentioned the self-assessment as the first bubble in her overview. And if you notice, she also mentioned it at the end. So we're going to begin with the self-assessment process. So as we see on the screen, the self-assessment process identifies areas of strengths as well as areas in need of improvement for your program operations. Also, the self-assessment process has to be a documented process. that allows for the use of data to determine what has been accomplished related to program compliances or program goals. So we can see that this information gathered through the self-assessment helps to inform programs' continuous quality improvement. That is a CQIP. The two bubbles here stresses the need for this annual process that identifies areas of strengths and needs in your program. It also stresses the use of data to decide if you're actually achieving the goals that you set out to achieve in your program. Something to note here about the self-assessment process. If you are a year one program, this is your first year of implementation, you will still do a self-assessment even though you will not be monitored until year two. Just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So new programs will definitely have to do a self-assessment this year. Okay, next bubble we're going to look at is the bubble planning improvements that involves the compliance checklist and the ECERS 3 CQIP. But before we look at this bubble, let's take some time to look at some intentional pre-planning that needs to be done. So what are these intentional pre-planning that needs to be done for your initial CQIP? Here on the slide it says, and this is a very important thing, identify the grant administrator. So it's really key that you know who your grant administrator is, who is listed as a grant administrator for your program. And if there's been a change in the administrator since the grant was awarded, please make sure the new administrator is listed as the contact in the e-grant. Or if this person, or if there's a change in the middle of the school year, it is important to update that information at earlychi@isbe.net to notify ISBE of this change. And I'll have Susie to drop that link in the chat. You can also update that information by contacting your ISBE consultant at isbe.net. No, actually, to get information about your program assigned ISBE consultant, I'll have Susie to put a link that will show a list of all the programs and the assigned ISBE consultant. So first you have to identify your grant administrator. The next important thing is develop a team for taking care of the implementation of the CQIP process. Now, who are the members of this team? It's one of the things we want to make clear here, that the CQIP is not a one-man show. So there has to be a team involved in this. The PFAE implementation manual specifically states that the CQIP should be developed collaboratively by program staff, administrators, teachers, and family. However, the size of this team will depend on the size of your program. So for example, a large school district, maybe the team for a large school district may be very different from the team for a small community-based organization. And as you begin to develop the team, you want to reflect on the voices that needs to be heard as you start putting together this intentional, systematic improvement to your program. This not only supports the continuous quality improvement process you're striving for, but it also ensures equity among all your stakeholders. The other thing we want you to take into consideration is number 3 here, develop a plan for sharing the monitor self-assessment information program-wide. Will the and so as you think of this, you want to ask yourself the question, how will stakeholders be able to review and contribute to the development of your CQIP? Again, this is dependent on your program size, but it's important to have this information shared so everyone will be aware of your plan for ongoing quality improvement. Now we can go into actually developing or completing the compliance checklist and ECERS CQIP forms. If you look at this slide, the graphic to the left is the actual compliance checklist form. The inset, the box in the inset in the lower section of the screen is your ISBE compliance checklist for PFAE and PFAE program implementation. During the monitor visit, program non-compliances will be documented in the notes section of the compliance checklist that inset in the bottom of the screen. So you will need the compliance checklist to be able to complete the compliance checklist CQIP form. So the first thing you want to do is review compliance items to identify who supports the implementation of the item and how the item is implemented. So you will need to collaborate with the team members who are responsible for that specific implementation. Then in the completion, you want to address all the non-compliances on the checklist, on the CQIP form, and be sure to complete all the columns. Cindy is pointing to, there is the column that you share the non-compliance issue, and in that column, you're putting in the information that you have from the notes section of the compliance checklist form. So Cindy is pointing to that. So in your monitoring, all the non-compliance will be detailed in that notes section, and you take that information and you put it actually in the non-compliance issue section on your CQIP form. Then the next step is to complete the steps to be taken before compliance. And you're documenting the specific steps your program will take to become compliant. Here, I'll also drop in the chat a link to a resource that will list all items 1 through 36 of the compliance checklist and resources that will support the programs becoming compliant. Then the next 2 columns is the person responsible, again, part of that team that we spoke about. Then the timeline, what is the time frame for becoming compliant. And the next couple of columns is where you would be putting information related to the follow-up that will be done in year 2, year 3, or if you go into a year 4 for your program implementation. So that was the compliance checklist CQIP. So there are two actual CQIP forms. The one that I just gave information on was the compliance checklist CQIP. Now we're looking at the—
Excuse me, can I ask a
ECERS
question about that continuous, the compliance checklist? I have a
Sure, go
question.
ahead. Uh-huh.
So that form that I filled out for this year to update, do I do a blank one and do it again at the start of next year?
Let me refer to Maddie to give you specifics on that one. Maddie?
Sorry, can you explain your question again one more time for me? So you're asking if you redo the CQIP form by itself for the next
Yes.
year?
Yeah, because I
No.
have follow-up steps and is it met? Yes. So do we fill out a new one with the same information and then
it-
update on those steps again?
It'll be the same form, so it's the same thing. So if it's followed up with, you just say yes. And if anything's changed, you note that. And if nothing's changed, you'll say, this has been met, say what you did to meet it.
So we use the
Can I
same
ask-
form and we just add to it.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, Lynn, what year were you just monitored this year?
No, we were monitored during the pandemic, so it was 2020. And then we had last year we had our actual ECERS visit. So we have two plans that are being submitted at 2 different times.
But when you submit, maybe Maddie, you can clarify. So when she had for May 31st, she has both an update due for each CQIP. She has a compliance CQIP due and an ECERS CQIP due, both due as updates May 31st of this year. Is
Correct.
that right, Maddie?
Correct.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Lynn?
Yes, we're just going to update the same form. I'm not
Exactly,
gonna-
the same document.
That's my question. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And so we're moving over to the ECERS CQIP, and just to provide clarity on that, it's the same process for that. Everything will be updated on this one form. So if you go in and click on this link on the ISBE website, you'll notice that this form is 15 pages long. I think it's 15 or 16 pages long. So each year you're adding 5 new areas. So it's just it's a continuous documentation of the things that you're doing to support the improvement of your program in year 1, year 2, year 3. And Cindy mentioned earlier, if you have a year 4, you're getting a blank document that you'll just continue the process of saying, what am I doing for the year? So it's one continuous document.
And I think where maybe Lynn's confusion is the compliance CQIP is not a continuous form. You have to use a blank form.
Yes.
Year after year.
Okay. So as we develop the ECERS CQIP, as I mentioned, on the left here is the actual ECERS CQIP form. I've also put in the small box inserted at the bottom, and that will be a copy. That's just a 1 page of your monitor report. And on that monitor report, you will find information that I will share as we go through this explanation. So in developing the ECERS CQIP, you're going to review your ECERS report for all your classrooms, then complete 1 CQIP form for each of 5 focus areas. Sorry about that, guys. So before you begin completing this form, you would have met with your team to review all your data, including the ECERS report for all your classroom, and you would have decided on the 5 areas for the CQIP. So now as you begin filling out the form, you're adding your program name, your RCDT information, which is a unique identifier for your program, and you're also adding the date. Then you'll add the focus area, the indicator number, the responsible staff, and the timeline. And as I mentioned, you're completing one sheet for each focus area. There should be a description of the focus area, not just the number. That's very important. For example, if you choose indicator 15, which is in the language and literacy area, you would put language and literacy, encouraging children's use of books, and then you will put the number 15 in the box that asks for the indicator. Something to note here, ISBE would like programs to prioritize the following focus areas for their CQIP. The first one is language and literacy, which covers indicators 12 through 16. And then another area of priority is interactions, which covers indicators 28 to 32. Then program structure that covers indicators 33 to 35. Those are areas of priority for ISBE. If you have done work or if you had addressed those areas, the next area of priority would be learning activities, which would be indicators 17 through 27. Okay, next we're going to look at, after you have looked at the focus areas, you're going to add the areas of effectiveness, areas for growth and improvement and learning opportunities. So as I said before, you're going to have one CQIP form or one page for each focus area. So the next page following this one where you would start putting information related to focus area number 2. So this one will have focus area number 2. The next page would have focus area 2 of the second focus area. The next page will have the third focus area, and so on and so forth. For the areas of effectiveness, here you're going to summarize information directly from that report that's in that insert at the bottom. And you'll see it listed actually there where it says areas of effectiveness. Then for that focus area, the same focus area, now you're going to have add areas for growth and improvement. This section needs to have the specific feedback, and you'll actually see where it says feedback on the report. And you're looking for the information that begins with during this observation, blah, 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 blah was seen, or blah, blah, blah was done. You want to make sure you put that specific information there. Then for the area of improvement and professional learning, here you document improvements that will help to bring about quality in that particular focus area. And you're also including professional development you think would work with improving that area. ISBE provides funding to various technical assistance projects throughout the state, and myself and Cindy consult with one of those, which is ECPL, who's providing this workshop. And through those projects, programs for Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion would get access to professional development opportunities. So in addition to ECPL, and I'm going to have that information also added to the chat, there's StarNet, there's Gateways, there's early choices. And I think on the ISBE website, you can find additional professional development providers. As we talk about professional development, I want to mention here that per the PFAE implementation manual, programs are required to have a professional development plan for all staff members. So as you start listing your ideas for improvement and professional development opportunities, the next thing you will start thinking is, what will my staff's professional development plan look like? Is this time for us to bring those out so we can start working on how will we support the improvement in the program through a professional development plan for your staff? The reflexive questions that you'll see also on the report will be very helpful in you thinking about professional development ideas. And I will have a sample professional development plan added to the chat for those who are in need of such a plan. Another thing to think of for programs is if you have a curriculum coach through your district, or if you're a PFAE program and you have an instructional leader, how will this person support the professional development and the improvement you're hoping to achieve for your program? So you have your PFAE instructional leader, or you may have a district curriculum coach, or there's an opportunity through ECPL for coaching assistance. And I will also put that information in the program where programs who are in need of the support can receive instructional coaching support from the PFAE coaching project. The final item is your follow-up reflection. And this will be—
Marlene, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
One thing that we also wanted to add is that professional development is for both teachers and paraprofessionals.
Yes.
It's required for both.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Yeah. And finally, as we finish completing this ECERS CQIP, let's move to the follow-up reflection box at the bottom of the form. In this box, you will you will reflect on what you did during the year related to that particular focus areas and the results you've achieved through your efforts. If your team chooses to use a focus area for the next year, still assess and reflect in this box what you've done the prior year and outline in your upcoming year CQIP, what are the things you will do in the upcoming year to further growth. This should not be a copy and paste effort from one year to the next. It's an actual reflection of how things worked out, what did you learn, and then you use this information as you plan for your next CQIP. This is another point I'd like to make here. It's important that you are submitting a compliance checklist CQIP and your ECERS CQIP each year. Even if you've addressed all the items on your compliance checklist CQIP, you will still be submitting that CQIP along with your ECERS CQIP annually. Now it's time to actually implement your CQIPs, and we're going to have Cindy to go over the process of embedding the CQIP throughout the year.
Excellence throughout the year. And so we want to hear from you. What are your program practices that build excellence for continuous quality improvement and professional learning? Let's put this in the chat and see what you would, what is happening in the field. What are you doing at the program level throughout the year? And when we think about the program level, we're thinking more about compliances. We're thinking more about those compliances that that you are embedding.
So I'm
leave it-
seeing here in the chat, Monica is mentioned professionally learning, ongoing professional learning, data-driven decision-making, PLCs, coaching cycles. Julie talks about ensuring that professional development is aligned to the goals. Cindy talks about the professional development provided through ECPL. I see here aligning our school improvement plan with the CQIP and ECERS, professional learning communities, PD and training with follow-up from program administrators, peer coaching, PD, webinars, reflection, making an effort to provide and share opportunities for professional development, PD designed around goals, data walls. We've got a lot of great information coming in. Increasing
Yeah, that's
fidelity with curriculum and data collection. Coaching, I see here Monica talks about coaching. Aligned assessments and utilizing that data to drive decisions. I have Dr. Sharon talks about the program completes an annual school work plan as required by the district and is coordinated with the CQIP. I see Lisa talks about follow-up with teachers after professional development to ensure implementation of practices. Should I continue reading, Cindy?
Well, those are all great. No, those are really great. I don't remember you saying anything about a parent piece. Did anybody put anything in there about their parent advisory?
Let's see here. School leadership, PLCs, leadership teams. See someone say using Teapot for improvements. No, I didn't see anything here. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and so that is another
someone
piece.
just did that. PAC next month.
Yay!
Yes, yes.
Nice. Yes. I mean, that's like getting all those voices heard. It sounds like we really have a lot of robust ideas there that bring out a lot of intentional and systematic building of excellence. I mean, those were some great ideas. So now let's look at the next question. So how would you, or how do you embed these at the classroom level throughout the year? So this is more like your ECERS 3 piece. And I think some of you typed some things in there that might even connect to this one as well, because they talked about some instructional leadership and such. But let's see what we get from this thought. What do you do at the classroom level? We heard Teapot. Was that, somebody already said that?
Yes,
We
someone
heard-
mentioned Teapot, pyramid model cohort.
Mhm.
I have someone here walk through StarNet observation,
Oh, smart. Very good.
instructional coaching, coaching cycles. I see classroom observation again.
That's great.
Staff
and so we're really saying
mentors.
that, yeah, that's like the mentors, and all of this sounds like real job embedded professional development, which is exactly what is referred to in the compliance checklist. That's for preschool for all expansion. Under those items in the compliance checklist, we are looking for teachers to have that job embedded professional development experience. And it sounds like you've got a lot of input there from the field saying that that's what's going on. That I hope some others are getting ideas from the
I see
excellence that you're hearing.
peer observations, ensuring teacher orders. That's one of the things I did years ago, ensuring teachers' orders for classroom materials are aligned with the goals. Instructional leaders using the CQIP to guide coaching cycles. classroom observation, team meetings weekly. Can you speak more about how PAC would affect CQIP? Even as simple as sharing your findings with your parent advisory, getting feedback on their ideas on homeschool connection, and just keeping them updated on your progress in the completion of your CQIP.
So this is like really trying to push programs to think about what does your compliance checklist annual update look like? You know, from some of the things that I'm hearing for this, really getting this embedded in a continuous quality improvement, I'm hearing things that are connected to compliance 16 and 31, which includes family education and involvement.
Yes.
I mean, so yeah, you're doing that. And if that is something you're really embedding that particular year, put that in your update that you've accomplished that, or that you're doing something even bigger next year. If you've done something to improve your comprehensive service delivery, which is item 28, then I would really think to what is it you're going to do next year to really improve your comprehensive service delivery. It may not have been a ding that you're working on. The state wants to know, what are you doing? How are you increasing quality? And item 33 in the compliance checklist, that's the Parent Advisory Council. So how is the information, how is the partnership with your Parent Advisory Council informing excellence in your program, and where does that fit in the compliance checklist? Certainly it fits in with your delivery of PFA, PFAE. And so think about how you can express the excellences you are doing as you are doing that CQIP. It's not just a matter of, NA, we are complete, met, all down the line. That's not what the state wants to see. They want to see what's happening in the field. What are you doing that's excellent? Update that CQIP for the compliance every year.
And another idea, Cindy, for that parent advisory committee, or even the parent education aspect, your CQIP can really be a tool to teach parents about how to work with their children and how they can support what's going on in the classroom. So a presentation, a parent education presentation about the CQIPs and your curriculum. What are you working on? How do we support language development? How do we support math learning? And then build on that. And then parents can in turn share ideas, because parents come in with wonderful ideas of the things that are being done in the home, or even suggest ways your program can actually work with them as partners for the development of their children.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How do I know when to submit these things? Do I get an email? How do I know my time frame?
So every year, what year are you in?
We are actually at the very moment being looked at. Like, she came a couple days ago and she has one more visit with us.
So if you're just now monitored, I guess I should defer to Maddie, but you have 30 days from the time you get the report. 30 days from the time you get the report to submit your CQIP. That's both of these documents that we are describing. Maddie, do you want to add to that?
Yes. So once
When is
I just
next time? Like next year, when do I know?
so after you're done being monitored, you'll receive your reports within 6 to 8 weeks, and then you will get an email saying your CQIP is due within 30 days. And then the following year, you will get an email and it will say your updates are due on, it's usually May 31st. So you will get an email reminder when both of those CQIPs are due.
Okay, so we will always be told when they are due.
Right.
They're always, every year they're due on May 31st, but when you get your monitor report, they're due within 30 days. And remember that caveat that I said early on. I don't know if you are a district or a community-based program, But it's often the case that when you get monitored this late in the school year, you can't convene a team. And it's never supposed to be just an admin fill out form for the CQIP. It's meant to be a process. That's really something we're trying to convey here, is that it's a process and it's teamwork. And so if you get that monitor report for your compliance checklist and your ECERS 3 monitor visit, not for another 6 weeks, your PFA program, or PFAE, whichever it is, would be done for the school year potentially. You may call your ISBE consultant and ask for an extension to August 31st so that you can work as a team to build that CQIP, both of those CQIPs.
Can I ask a question in regards to that date that you're saying? So because we were monitored 30 days to respond was April 5th. We sent it in. So we have to do it again for May 31st? Okay.
No, you don't do it again until next May
Next year.
31st. Sorry, Maddie, I have to let you answer
Yeah,
that.
that's okay.
So would I call the person that I've connected with? Like I have a person from that first link that you sent us of who my coach or who my person is. I would call them and ask for an extension.
Yes,
Yes.
that's your ISBE consultant, like
Okay,
Maddie.
thank you.
Mhm. So here we are at the updating the CQIP in year 2 and 3. So again, the annual self-assessment is required for the ISBE compliance checklist CQIP and the ECERS 3 CQIP. Through the
What is the
system-
self-assessment? I'm sorry, is this a separate document that we have to reflect on, or is this still part of our CQIP plan that we wrote originally?
Okay, so that's a really excellent question. And I know it sounds rather vague, but really self-assessment is just that. It's self-assessment. So for example, you may have a parent survey that goes out that informs you about something that you're like, aha, that is something that I want to address. And that may connect then to your CQIP. Your CQIP is always data driven. And so self-assessment is just looking at your CQIP and thinking, okay, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? And that's part of it, but your self-assessment is that it's a self-assessment. It doesn't look the same everywhere. Some are doing teapots. Some do an extra ECERS 3 self-assessment. I don't know, Marlene, do you want to add to that? I think we touched on that in a bit.
I think the important thing to understand here that your self-assessment is a part of the entire CQIP process. So as we
It is
show that
cyclical. That's the key.
cyclical graphic, you start with the self-assessment and you go through in updating your the information from either that self-assessment or from your monitor report. Then you implement those improvements. Then the next year, you're going back into another self-assessment to see how that worked. Then you create updates, you implement, you review, then you're just going around. So each year you're doing a self-assessment. You use that self-assessment to inform your CQIP. The CQIP are those two forms. You have the compliance checklist CQIP and you have the ECERS CQIP. So you're using all that information from the self-assessment. Like Cindy says, the self-assessment could be a parent survey. It could be a staff survey. It could be teapot. For those of you who are with Head Start, it could be class. It could be a peer observation of classroom. It could be anything that will give you information about the strengths and challenges that you're having in PFA or PFAE operations.
And I want to expand that just a little bit more, Marlene. Marlene, thanks. That really clarifies a bit there. But I also want to add, you think about what data you have. So what data are you gathering? All the teachers are gathering assessment data. That student data is real valuable data. Where are there gaps in the learning? what data can you gather as a self-assessment through an ECERS 3 self-assessment, a TPOT self-assessment, which is a teaching pyramid observation tool that some programs are using, but you have data to use and to review and have that improve practices for the upcoming year. That is what self-assessment refers to. It's not just looking at last year's CQIP. It's more than just there. Now we check, we did that CQIP, check. Now we do the next CQIP. Oh, let's see, which items did we not do yet? Oh, let's do number, item number 15 this year. But why? Just why? You need to know the why. Maybe the student data tells you why. Maybe parent feedback tells you why. What's the why to choose that?
Okay, I think we do that in my district, and I'm sure I speak for all the other directors out there. I guess the question isn't so much we do a whole bunch of things that you just listed or other people have listed. I guess I'm asking, where do we put this information for you? Because we do these things and it's a great cycle. I understand this cycle completely. I'm more concerned about compliance for the grant and how we're filling out these forms. That's what's unclear to me.
The data is simply informing the way that you are going to choose the compliance items that you are going to report on in your updates, and it's going to inform what you do on your ECERS 3.
So Lynn, just to answer yes, that's exactly what we did. The self-assessment is for you. It's self-assessment. So in terms of compliance, you want to have that data available so you can show I have assessed myself each year and I'm using the data from my assessment to make decisions about the updating of my next year's CQIP.
Okay, understood now. And I do that actually with my staff.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So you have a choice in the tool that you're going to use to get the data that you need to inform the CQIP that you now have to send off to ISBE to see how will you continue work on continuous quality improvement.
Understood.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to start this again on this one because now I think we have new eyes. So let's think about it with that richer understanding of what self-assessment means. So through this systematic and intentional process, the written self-assessment determines if progress is being made towards achieving all required components of the grant and is used to document progress. This is a grant requirement. Earlier, we saw on the actual ECERS 3 CQIP template, it states, for each area of focus, list the areas of effectiveness from the monitor report or the self-assessment. It says it right on there. So you can list the areas of, like say you're in year 3 or year 4, you might want to you need to list your areas of effectiveness. You may have some new discoveries that you are listing in that areas of effectiveness from the monitor report or self-assessment, and the areas of growth for improvement also on the report or those determined by your program's self-assessment. So information gathered through this self-assessment should be based on the program's continuous quality improvement plan. As mentioned earlier, this is compliance number 19 of the compliance checklist. The annual self-assessment process should inform individualized staff development plans and be used to revise the program's annual CQIP update. Okay, so, and now we've just really I mean, my next point was consider all assessment data available. And so that's basically what we just, when we answered that question, that's really what we were digging into. So let's look more deeply at this yearly plan of review and reflection. All right, So now let's just smoosh our faces to the looking glass and ponder some helpful reflection questions. All these reflection questions can be found on pages 65 and 66 of the ISBE Preschool for All Implementation Manual. I think Susie's going to drop that link in the chat for you. Now I'm going to read this slowly, maybe for time's sake, not too slowly, because I want you to think about this as a reflection. Though these, you can find these in your manual. What has been accomplished on the CQIP? What would the team say? Coming together, reflection time. What has been accomplished on the CQIP? Where are we now? What has been accomplished within current program goals? What resources supported those accomplishments? What accomplishment goals have yet to be reached? What would happen if you asked your team, where do we want to be? And what has not yet been accomplished? You get your team sitting around and thinking about these big questions. It can be so robust and really impact your CQIP. What new goals need set? How do we get to where we want to be? Let's identify what is needed to help us meet the goals. And what resources are needed? What staffing? What funding? What equipment? What stakeholders do we need to hear from that support school, district, state, and support community, and what community support can be used? What services should be delivered? What is the quality of instruction and curriculum? What is the timeline for completing steps towards goals? And how do we know if we are getting there? These are all really robust questions and just think about what impact that could have on the kinds of CQIP you would develop with a team think on these questions. It could be so rich and so robust. Data from the yearly review with reflections and self-assessment will drive the CQIP annual update. The CQIP should be developed systematically and with input from all stakeholders. It is time to ask again about the who. So who is on your team? And who is participating in the process? Whose voice do you still need to hear? As you gather data, be thoughtful about those voices that need to be heard. The data you gather needs to represent the children, the families, the teachers, and the program staff who are affected by the systems and practices in place. Programs use monitoring data for team reflection. The annual review of the ISBE compliance checklist should be completed and documented to ensure continual compliance on all items. Even if you had a perfect score, which I don't know if that ever happens, you still need to do it. And you have to review and think about who you are and who you want to be as a program every single year. Programs may also use other self-assessment data. We've kind of gone over this time and again, such as parent surveys, staff surveys, student assessment data, pyramid model teapot assessment, classroom assessment scoring system data, ECERS 3 self-assessments, and the previous year's CQIP as they develop the next year's updated CQIP.
Cindy, we have so many questions in the chat. I'm wondering where should we start? Maddie, how are we doing? Questions.
I did take note of most of them. I hope I didn't miss any along the way, but I can start with ones that I thought may not have been addressed or maybe
Okay.
asked for some repeats. So one question I saw pop up was that what if you're in year 4 or you haven't been monitored in a while? You still do that blank template as it was mentioned in the presentation. So if you're on year 4 or past that, you start on a blank template, and your goals for ECERS can change based on your self-assessment, as we've said in this presentation. So it's been a while since your last monitoring visit. You're probably going to want to change those focus areas to what you think your program needs to work on. I saw a question about if this is your first year, do you still need to do a CQIP even though you're not being monitored? And right now you just need to do a self-assessment. So we kind of cover that part in the presentation. And then somebody asked to repeat the due.
Let me also clarify, sometimes year 1, it's really like, then you get that monitor visit that second year, and it's there. And I understand that overwhelming because I've been in that position. And so you do that self-assessment, and that is helping you meet compliance 19 when you're pulling all your evidence of doing what you need to do together. So you do it so that you know where your program's at and where you're going, what you've done successfully. You do that with team, and that meets compliance 19.
And Cindy, I also want to start for year 1 program, start out simply. Do a parent survey. Don't try to do something that takes you into an even more overwhelmed state. Do something very simple. And as you go in, then you have the results from your monitor the next year, then you'll get a better sense of what's going on in your program. So I think I'd just like to underscore for year 1 programs, I'm seeing a lot of question. There's a specific question that's saying, this is a bit overwhelming. Start simple, do your self-assessment, do something simple, and then you'll get your monitor to give you a broader sense of what's going on in your program.
Yes, I Marlene, it can be so simple. Parent surveys, teachers, a survey of your teaching staff for your program. These things inform what you are doing and what you can do better. It's just getting the ball rolling and assessing what you are doing. The next year you will get more information.
Right. I also, so for May 31st, I saw some confusion on that deadline too. And that is for programs that were not monitored this year. So if you were not monitored this year and you're not in your first year, then you owe updates. So if from the last time you were monitored, you provide an update on what you've done to meet those compliance items and reflect on your ECERS goals.
Maddie, kind of going along with that. So we're a district that it's been a long time since we've been monitored. I know you guys have been saying at year 4, even after year 4, start fresh with the new one. So when we're submitting the CQIP by May 31st, do we have to include years 1, 2, 3, 4, and now this one for the coming 5th year? Or do you want us just a fresh new one? Because then there's not any updates that are included in the fresh new one.
Correct. attach that old document still, but if you're starting fresh with your goals, that's fine, but just attach that old document just to make sure that we know what you're going off of previously, and make sure our records are still good to
And
go.
you also do that because there's that follow-up at the bottom of the page. You know, you have to complete that. So the year before, the one from the year before has that section that needs to be completed as well. So it's a continuous document in the ECERS 3. And of course, the compliance checklist document is fresh every year.
No, I understand that. It's just the communication was get a fresh one. So I just wanted to clarify. Take the old one,
Oh,
update the old one, add the fresh one,
Yes.
send all of it together at the same time.
Yes.
there's
And
a
with the-
question about the 5. Oops, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say with the compliance CQIP, that one doesn't necessarily have additional like reflections as part of it though, right?
Right, so that compliance CQIP just kind of stays the same from your monitoring visit. You're not updating those compliance pieces with things that need to be worked on. Those are just what was found at your visit. And then if anything has changed, you put that in your follow-up column.
Okay, and then I had one last question. Hopefully I'm not dominating all the conversation. I feel like many programs might have this similar question, but let's say we're using data from our student performance. We identify that our children might be struggling in the area of telling about another time and place. So we're gonna identify that this is something we want to work on. However, now we need to fit that into how does ECERS address that, right? And so now we're looking at like what elements of ECERS. So now we might use staff use
probably
books with
under
children,
language.
identify, section language and literacy, number 14, looking at how staff use the staff use of books with children, right? So now that might be an opportunity to focus. So yes, the template is very flexible, allows us to use data, but we always have to keep coming back to that ECERS as part of the continuous quality improvement. Is that right?
Yes.
Andrew, thanks for asking those questions. I just want to clarify a little bit further. I think maybe some of us who've been around for a while, maybe some of the maybe frustration that is maybe kind of being sort of felt here is when it doesn't attach to a like your report, it's often sent back. And I'm one of those programs who we haven't been monitored in over 5 years. So I just want to verify that we can start blank. I just don't look forward to it being sent back because like many have said on here, we're doing great processes of, reviewing data and that kind of thing. But if it doesn't tie to it's just such old data, and our program has changed pretty drastically in the last 6 years.
So your data kind of, it doesn't have to tie, if you're that far out from your monitoring visit and you find new focus areas for ECERS through self-assessment, that's okay, but it needs to still tie into, I believe as Andrew was saying, your ECERS piece. So if you're seeing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I guess just like last year when I submitted it, because it didn't tie to some of our non-compliances from our last report, it just kept being sent back. However, like I said, the data is so old and we would never look at data from 5-6 years ago. So I guess that's my point.
So Maddie, would that be an example where she should contact her consultant with that
Yeah.
kind of confusion rather than just being frustrated? I mean, you really should just contact your consultant and find out, because sometimes you might be perceiving the reason it's sent back in one way and it's being sent back because of something else specific. Maybe there was.
Does our individual consultant, is that the one who reviews the CQIP plans?
Usually your consultant is the one who reviews them. but your individual consultant is the one to go to first. And if they're not the ones reviewing it, then they'll direct you to who you need to talk to about the CQIP.
Okay, because in my specific incident last year, I don't know what the reason for, but I did have that conversation with my consultant and then somebody else reviewed it. So that's where there was miscommunication. So I
Okay.
did it the way that the consultant said, and then somebody else reviewed it. And so it's like the conversation didn't even happen.
Hi, I have a question,
Yes.
and my name is Linda Avery. I did ECERS and ECERS before at 2 other different programs, but I've never did it to the extent that y'all are doing it now. And I know we're up for them to come out. I just don't know who the person is at this point. And I'm kind of like, I got a lot to do before they get here. I mean, we run our program, accordingly, but it just seems like there's so much more to it now. So, should I be nervous?
What is your question? Is there support for you because it's much more of a process than you had imagined? What is your question exactly?
Yeah, that's kind of my question. The support.
And this is a PFAE program?
Yes.
So you can always reach out to your ISBE consultant, and sometimes after, and we kind of alluded to this, to the coaching project in our presentation, but sometimes programs do they do end up needing a little support to walk through the process, and a coach is
Yeah.
able to help the teacher, and that generally doesn't happen until after a monitor visit, and then a coach can be assigned to a program.
Okay.
And that may be if you're being monitored this year, and if you are unable to get the help you need, I would really recommend calling your ISBE consultant, because they are always very helpful at helping you understand how to gather documents and how to self-evaluate prior to the monitor visit.
Can we have that link to the ISBE consultant put in the chat again?
Yeah, I think Lynn Duffy just put it there.
Oh, okay.
She must have pulled it off from the earlier
Yeah.
link. Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'm looking through the chat. There's a question about someone who was their monitor and their ECERS monitor and their compliance checklist monitor was done in separate years. And Maddie, can you share about them reporting their CQIPs related to those two, that kind of scenario?
So this is where it gets a little bit confusing, but okay, so if you were monitored during COVID, some programs were monitored for compliance and ECERS in different years, and you will be submitting updates for both of those pieces on May 31st. Eventually, the goal is to have everybody, I believe, is to have everybody monitored for both ECERS and compliance at the same time. But before we get to that point, you're still updating those pieces and submitting them on May 31st. So you may be in year 2 for ECERS and year 3 for compliance, for instance. But you're still submitting those updates on May 31st.
And that does not mean, Maddie, clarify, that does not mean that they're going to have 2 different monitor visits. It's going to be one monitor visit
Right.
in the future, barring any other national pandemic.
Yeah, I'm looking through the chat to see if there are any other questions that we
I have a question,
missed.
Maddie.
Mhm.
So you're saying that our compliance quality checklist, the CQIP, the compliance checklist, and the improvement plan are two different things that we have to submit, but we have different years for them. This is
No.
my second year as a preschool person, so I'm really struggling.
So that's not the case for everyone. It's just for some programs that were monitored during COVID. There were some programs that were monitored for one thing and not another. So if you are one of those programs, I believe you should know that, but yes, each program still submits, regardless of if you were monitored in different years or not, the ECERS CQIP and the compliance CQIP updates each year. That
Okay,
makes sense.
so will my I all this verbiage, will my consultant know if I'm on the same for both of these?
They should know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Maddie, I also have another question here. Our district our ISBE consultant vacancies expected to be filled soon. Our district does not currently have a consultant. Is there somewhere that they can?
Yeah. So if you do not have a consultant, if you're one of the vacant, if it says vacant position next to your program, email the earlychi@isbe.net account, earlychi@isbe.net, and they should be able to connect you with someone that can answer your questions. Or you can call the department and they will forward your call to one of the consultants who can answer a question that you have for now.
There's another question that says, is there one ECERS CQIP per program, correct? Or one per classroom? It's for the program.
Right.
It's not per classroom. It's one CQIP for the program for ECERS and one CQIP for the program for compliance checklist.
And I do see a question in the chat about updating the CQIP forms, and the ECERS CQIP was updated this year. So it should give you an unlimited amount in the text box now, which we're excited about.
Oh, that's an improvement.
Yeah.
So there's a confusion about, we just got our CQIP. Wait a minute, where did it go? I think it basically said, we just got our monitor report. Do we also, so that's, now you just got your monitor report. You have 30 days to do your CQIP. And then, so you don't worry about the May 31st. You're just 30 days from the monitor report.
Right.
Next year, it's May 31st for the updates.
On our ECERS CQIP, so the total score, like the item score, so we look at our lowest scores there to write our CQIP from.
Yes, so it's,
Yes.
areas of growth that you feel your program needs to work on based on your ECERS score and report from monitoring.
Hi, Tony. It's good to see you. And also when you're doing that, to especially focus on the areas that the state prioritized, which we described earlier. Marlene helped me with that. It is literacy and language and literacy, interactions, and program structure. So I would certainly look at those scores first before looking at learning activities, because the state prioritizes those three areas. I say it right: language and literacy, interactions, and program structure. So once you look at those, then if you still need more, if you want to go into the learning activities, that might be year 2 or year 3 or year 4. Hopefully.
Okay, there's one last question and then we're going to wrap it up and pass it on to ECPL. There's a question that about a self-assessment form. There isn't an ISBE self-assessment form. And I want to stress again here that you can choose the self-assessment tool that you use. And I'm wondering if folks that have used different self-assessment tools can just drop that information in the chat to share with others. We mentioned that you can use a parent survey, you can use staff survey, you can use TPOT if you're doing the pyramid model. I think I saw someone mention 5 Essentials, some of the data from there. You can, if you're doing classroom peer classroom observations, collecting data from that. If you're using data from any assessment systems that you have in place to evaluate program operations, it's really you assessing what's going on in your program and using that data to further inform how you're updating the quality improvement for your program. So for those of you who've been doing this a while, can you just jot in the chat, just throw it in the chat for the benefit of those who are still struggling with this question about self-assessment so they can get an idea.
Yeah, there's some great ideas there. Yeah, take a look at that. Somebody dropped their own tool. Yeah, okay, we need to go on to let
I'm
Susie.
going to pass this on to Susie as we wrap up this presentation.
Okay, thanks again, everybody. Thank you to the presenters, Cindy and Marlene today. And if you participate in additional early childhood professional learning webinars, please be sure to visit our website at eclearningil.org, which is where you can also register for our next Administrator Forum session. And it is the topic of inclusion, which is scheduled for May 17th from 1 to 2:30. So just an additional note, following this webinar, you will be receiving an evaluation email, which when completed will direct you to the evidence of completion. Any additional links that we had provided in the chat today, all the separate links that we were providing, we will be sharing those as a document in the follow-up email as well. So the recording also will be on the YouTube channel, and that will probably be within the next week. So again, if you have any additional questions following this webinar, please send an email to us at ecpl@cntrmail.org. However, any of the questions pertaining to the specific topic discussed today, again, should be directed to ISBE or your ISBE consultant. And then if you have no other further questions or comments, you are free to exit the Zoom room. We're going to hold on for just a few more moments if anybody has anything else to share.